Hello, troopers. So today we're going to walk through what in the world to do with a crepe myrtle. Now, you may or may not know that crepe myrtles are, you may or may not know a lot of things about crepe myrtles. Number one, they are native to Southeast Asia. They have just taken a fish in the water to the southeastern United States. But they can be very invasive. I have friends whose foundations have been ruined by them because people, think that they're going to be a nice flowering tree to have in the yard. And when you live in a really hot area like I do, you want something that'll flower because not everything will. So especially in the city, people just think they're, easy to use, and they are. The problem is once they seed and flower, everything they drop can turn into another tree like it's nobody's business. Even if you've got that whole area black tarped out, they can still grow up through that. So they're very pervasive. They're really good at growing in this area, and it's invasive. So number one, don't go buy one probably at all. But if you do insist on going and buying one, just make sure that you're, growing that thing at the edge of your drive, not near your house. It's really important. I have a pier and beam house, so it's not quite as big a deal as if I had a concrete foundation. But they're still going to get under there. And the people who owned this house before me, who made some lovely steps in terms of trying to get this property to homestead, sort of a more independent status, planted 3 crepe myrtles, probably for privacy purposes, because they planted one right in front of they're all on the south side of the house, which is where the neighboring windows kind of, look into each other. They did one in the front bedroom and then 2 in the back bedroom, which makes sense. It's the master bedroom. And there's a whole wall of windows there. And so it makes sense from a privacy perspective, but just, from a nature perspective, it's just not, the house is not going to survive if those stay there. So when I moved here a year ago, I asked around to see if anybody wanted to come dig them up and take them away. Nobody did. And I was told that you want to dig them up around this time of year, kind of in the fall, once it gets cooler and the trees aren't so stressed out from the heat. It's cooling off here, but I think we could probably even go into November and be okay with somebody relocating them. I'd love for somebody to relocate them just to a different part of the property, because what I did do earlier in the summer is I just cut them all the way down. I only have clippers, like hedge clippers, but I cut them all the way down. They're pretty young trees, but they just grow like crazy. They had grown 4 feet, probably 3 or 4 feet in the winter, and I cut them way down in May, and they've done the same thing now. There's only one of them that's flowering though, and that's the one toward the front of the property. So what I did today was I looked up how to what the properties were that I could use of crepe myrtles. Was there something that I could use of them? And it turns out there are several. So in Indian and Chinese medicine, these are common things to use. Makes sense because they're prolific. And so I'm going to show you what I've done. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a Chinese medicine doctor, especially, and I'm not an Ayurvedic doctor, and I'm not an MD. So you do you. I'm not giving you any kind of medical advice, and I haven't tried all of these yet. I can do an update once I've done that. But what I did do is identify how to preserve them so that I can use them. I'm not going to use them until I've dried them, probably, unless I just want to make a little bit of tea. But I'll show you what I've done so far. So one moment. Okay. So keeping in mind that the yield on this is just for one plant, and it is my plants are bright pink flowering, but they're not green colored leaves. They're generally the blacker colored leaves. So that's part of why you see that kind of coloring. But also, as they're drying, they're going to lose some of their green anyway. So don't worry too much about that. But I'll show you there's 3 areas that we'll work with today. But bear in mind, you can use the bark also. Mine are not mature enough to really use the bark. I am drying the stems and I may boil them. But from what I understand, the bark is a helpful insulin regulator. I don't have diabetes, but I do have hypoglycemia, and so that means it might be really useful for me, or I might really need to watch how much I use, because if it over regulates. Um, but a lot of people are diabetic, and insulin is really unaffordable in this country. So it's really good to know that that's an option. So first off, I'm going to show you the weather's nice today. So I've opened the windows. I have newer windows, and what you want to keep in mind if you have newer windows, anything that's energy saving has a filter on it that removes the ability it blocks whatever kind of frequency and ray you need in order to convert skin chemicals to vitamin D in your body. So you want to keep those windows open when you can. But I also mention it because it's going to dry a little bit differently if that's closed versus if it's open. Now, this is not a rainy day. If it were a rainy day, I would keep everything closed up for drying purposes, or I would put things in the dehydrator. However, the dehydrator has a fan, and although I just accidentally turned on the fan because I turned on this light, this is what I've got going here. So you can see these are the flowers, and these are super duper light. If you've never done crepe myrtle, like, it's super duper light. There's a reason they call it crepe. So it's very light. So I just want this to get ready. These are kind of crunchy here. These are the darker. You can see they're darker than, say, these, which are brand new off the plant. And of course, they lose volume as well once you dry them. So these were just dried on the plant. But when you're harvesting the flowers, you want to go ahead and harvest kind of all the things you're going to harvest. And you want to do it with clippers and be gentle about it, because as soon as these fall, these have the seeds in them. And as soon as these fall, these will take root, and they are just banshees about it. Okay. So you could have a lot of little sprouties real quick, and you will not be happy about it. It will not be a good thing. So, so be careful about that. I'm just going to leave these for a couple of days, just, until they get crunchy, and then I'm going to put them in a jar. It's like not rocket science. So now I'll show you the other pieces that I'm processing. Okay. Whoa. Okay, I just dropped the computer, and this is still on. That's weird. Oh my gosh. What I was going to tell you was these are boxes that I'm collecting to put out in the front yard, because my front yard is, like I said, full-time sun all the time. And it grows a ton of grass, and it doesn't need to, and I don't want it to. And so I'm saving those for the landscapers to put on top so that we can kill off the grass, so that we can just have that as a wildflower area. I won't be growing a bunch of edibles out there, because there's roads, and that's where my driveway is. So you got to keep in mind where you want to grow your stuff that you want to put in your body. But anyway, so I'll show you this now. These are the two boxes. You just want them kind of where they can be in a pretty even single layer and kind of breathe. So although I harvested them and brought them in one box, I quickly took them into two boxes, right? Because you just want to give them some room to breathe so that they can dry out in a timely fashion. If they don't dry out in a timely fashion, of course, then they'll mold, and it won't be fun. So, so that's what we got going there. And then I'll show you the final piece. This is where I actually did the processing. These are the pieces that I took off of it. So you can see there's a good many. These are quite tall. I mean, I'm grown-up size, and so these are pretty tall, good 3 or 4 feet high, and they're kind of pretty anyway. And it's almost Halloween, and I might just make that into my Halloween tree and then Christmas tree if I have the right doodads to put on it. But you'll notice like it's really stripped down. You know, it's fully yielded. But the bark is kind of delicate and it's real thin and it can peel off real easy. So once you have like proper tree trunk size things going on, you can pull those off. And the tree doesn't care. It's fine. So you can make a decoction around that and make tea. With the leaves, what I understand is that these are good for kind of kidney health and some people mention diabetes as well. I do have some weaker organs, and so I'm going to try it for that kidney health. And I think that'll be interesting to see how that goes. So you can see many of them have already blackened from even this morning. It's about 12:30 now. So they've really only been drying for about 3 hours. They're not, I don't even know if drying is the right word for them yet. They're not really dry at all yet, but they're just doing their thing. So once they do that, I'll put them in a glass jar, and then I'm going to leave them whole in this case, just because I don't have a tea ball. And so I just make my tea with loose leaf everything and then just strain it out. It's easier to strain out full leaves, obviously. So I'll do that, put them in a jar, and then what I'll probably do is I'll put them in the freezer for 24 hours. You don't want to put them in the freezer now because it will kill anything that's water soluble that's in them that's a nutrient, because there's still water in it. But once the water is out, everything else in it will be stable, and then you can put it in the freezer. The only reason I do that is just because I intend to store it for quite a long time, and I don't want to get into like, oh, there was one bug living in there and so it ruined the whole lot. I just do that kind of for insurance. So that's what I can share about that. But I did find it really interesting to look up crepe myrtle. The buds, the people talk about the buds or the seeds. I'm too late in the season to get those. But if you get those and you want to harvest those, that'll be before it flowers and before those buds open. You can do that. You can also use them as seasonings. Grind them up and use them as seasonings. It's kind of an aromatic, so kind of between a juniper and sort of a rosemary, I'm told. I can't use salt, so I can't brine them like a caper or something, although that would be tasty. So because I just have the flowers, I'm not going to be creating any seasoning for right now. But because mine continue to produce all the time, there's a good chance I'll get to do that soon. I would still say, mine are right outside my windows. That's not where you want them. You really want them. My neighbor has them lining her yard right at the property line, and that's a wise place to have them. But that said, they grow like crazy, and so they look pretty unkempt if you don't take care of them. And so I think harvesting them not only keeps them from taking over the underground of your property and not only has a health benefit to it, but also gives you a chance to, without being smart or landscapey or, having a lot of special tools, to just keep things under control. Because as long as they're small, you can see those branches are very small. You can just clip them with, any old clippers. You don't need something special or a chainsaw or anything. So, yeah. So that's what I can tell you about that. Hope that was helpful. Over and out.